Hi, I'm Teresa Curavan with Help My Child Thrive and the Right Place Learning Center. I'm going to talk today a little bit about defiance and differently wired children. So I have a book coming out in the summer of 2021, and if you're watching this video after that, the link will be below. I also have a book that's already out called My Differently Tuned In Child, and that link will be below as well. So I specialize in differently wired children, and I offer assessments and coaching, and I do all of this on Zoom right now. So no matter where you're living, you can contact me. I offer free 20-minute consultations to see if we are a right fit for each other, and I work with parents mostly. So today, talking about defiance. ODD, or oppositional defiant disorder, is being diagnosed quite a bit today. I think it seems like there are trends in diagnoses, and while sometimes they are accurate, it seems like some diagnoses are given more than others during different periods of time. In the past, it was bipolar disorder and then ADHD, and now I think ODD might be the newest trend. It doesn't matter. What matters is, understanding your child and what's truly going on. So today I'm going to talk about my book that's coming out is on defiance and different learners. So differently wired, non-neurotypical children. What I'm going to talk about today is giftedness and defiance. So I have an article, I'll also link that I'm writing, that will be out by the time this video comes out, on giftedness and defiance and misdiagnosis. And in it, I give an example of a high school student who goes to a gifted school. It's actually a gifted school. And because his parents did so much work in finding the right educational fit, they assumed that he was set. And unfortunately, some gifted learners, especially the very non-neurotypical ones, it's hard to find them a perfect educational fit. We can find good enough. But it's important to know when it's a little bit off, because what looks like defiance can actually be a child just saying, this doesn't work for me. And understanding that is going to be the key to success. You're not saying that the defiance is okay. In other words, not doing homework, refusing this and that, but understanding the reason why is going to be really helpful and actually will make your life as parents a lot easier. So if you are a child or a teenager or even a college student and you're watching this, and you want your parents to understand this, you can forward this video to them. So the hard part about giftedness in particular is that it's quite invisible. Even if a child has been tested when they're younger for giftedness, it gets forgotten. Other labels become louder, like ADHD and defiance and things like that, which may be part of the picture. But what I like to do is understand everything in terms of the strengths of a child and taking a holistic approach. So with this one student who by junior year was acting out, leaving school without anyone's permission, going on joyrides with another friend who maybe had some other issues but weren't the same as his, he was actually bored. So while he was at a gifted school, by junior year he had just had it, because while the classes he was taking were all AP and they were all about maybe 3 years ahead of him in grade level, where he was in certain areas like physics and the sciences was probably more like master's level. And so he would take the classes, but they found them boring. And if a teacher wasn't engaged, because of his giftedness, he could tell. And the truth is, this particular child was actually pretty compliant until about 9th grade. He really did the work to get all his homework in. He wanted to please his teachers. He wanted to please his parents. But the work was actually very dry and tedious and did not suit his brain, to be quite honest. It wasn't high level enough, most of it. And where there were challenges, he could trudge through and kind of do a workaround to make it work for him. So he was completely bored and acting out in order to feel a sense of excitement and to feel alive. Well, I think that with gifted learners, with any learner, we can make their education suit them so that it's interesting and engaging. And what I hear a lot from parents is, well, they have to fit into the world, and the world isn't always exciting. I argue that until we have a good gifted education or good education system set up, I think it's okay for parents to admit that we're falling short as far as the interest level and the engagement level our children are at, especially gifted learners, perhaps everyone. But the gifted kids just can't tolerate it, and they will go into depression or into defiance eventually if it isn't at least recognized. So my argument to that is, if you think that you're preparing your child for a boring world, I challenge you on that, because I think that what we're creating is a boring world if we're preparing our children for a boring world, if that makes sense. I think that our non-typical learners they're refusing to go along, and some of them just can't, with our school setting as it is, because they're here to create a world. They're wired for what the future is going to be. They're into things like video creating and science fiction. If you look at what they're really into, it's usually creative, it's outside of the box, and it's everything that the world needs more of right now. I can go into all of this deeper, but I think for this video, I'll stop it there and just say that if you can't do anything else, for your differently wired child, and especially if they're gifted, and they have to be in a typical school, most people do, you can at least understand them and where they're coming from. It doesn't mean you're allowing misbehavior, you're just understanding it from a different perspective. And actually, there are a lot of things you can do from that understanding that gets your child out of the defiant behavior. And I'll put more of that in my book. And sometimes people have an easier time reading my articles because I articulate a little bit better there, and you can slow down and reread something that we all learn differently. Sometimes we have to learn by video, and sometimes we learn by reading, and sometimes it's both. So I encourage you to take a look at my article too if you want better understanding of this. Differently wired children can have many different things going on at one time. This example of the gifted boy in high school, which is a pretty typical example, is just one thing: giftedness. Sometimes there will be executive functioning challenges and ADHD with the giftedness. Sometimes there's autism. You can have many different things going on all at one time. And that's why it's important to understand what's going on for your child, rather than listen to all the voices of how you were raised and the parenting advice that's more typical. I think it's important to trust your intuition and remember that when our children are defiant, they're probably trying to say something and they may not even know what they're trying to say. So that's why I often start with parents. And, a lot of us were trained to be bored in school, and we have to undo that too. There's a lot of intelligence in being engaged. That's actually where intelligence and creativity comes from. So it's quite ironic, I think, that we're thinking our children need to be bored in order to learn, because that's just so not the case. So again, my book is for differently tuned in learners, and Defiance should be out by summer of 2021. And I'll have a link below if you're watching this video after that. I also have the book, My Differently Tuned In Child, which will be linked below. My article will be linked, and I also offer coaching and assessments all by Zoom right now. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, and maybe I'll see you again. Thank you. Again, I'm Teresa with the Right Place Learning Center, and Help My Child Thrive. And you can also look at my websites of the same name. Thank you.